mean, I couldn't believe it when my son texted me and he's like, he went 47 of 57. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, and then I see the penalties and then I see they lost by 20. And I'm like, how does that even happen? Like, what happened in this game?
Kurt, I'm going to ask you kind of an unconventional question because we've had this conversation, Bo and I have, over the last 24 to 48 hours. And it sure seems like, barring just a bunch of lopsided defeats, Jonathan Gannon is going to remain the head coach of this team entering 2026. And he does not have a winning record, does not have a winning season. It'll be his fourth year next year. And, there are some that are very critical of that decision. Then there are others that applaud Michael Bidwell and the patience, whereas maybe historically this franchise, other franchises are quick to run through coaches. Do you think the Cardinals could benefit from giving Jonathan Gannon another year? And do you think there's a problem in the NFL with running through coaches too quickly?
I mean, always, especially when they're a first-time coach, because I think we all have to go through a learning curve. And as much as we want, it's like when we draft someone high in the draft and we expect them to come in as a finished product. It doesn't work like that. There's a process that they have to go through. When you hire a first-time head coach, and I don't know what the time period is, 3 years, 4 years before you can truly tell what a player or a coach is going to be, what you can hang your hat on and if they're the right guy. But I feel like there has to be, at least 3 years for you to go, okay, this is what we think we have. And then we can ask the question, do we think what we have is good enough moving forward? But I mean, I think we all felt this was, this has been moving in the right direction, and you liked what they were doing, and you like the way that Coach Gannon leads the team. Like, I mean, I feel very comfortable with from where he started to where he's at now, that he's growing into this position, and has handled it well. But again, it's got to couple with putting the right team on the field, and then leading to wins and finding ways to get your guys, to that next level, whether that's getting the right guys in because you don't have the right guys in,
right,
or doing your part to help these guys learn how to finish and how to take that next step, in the process. And so, again, when I came here, this organization was in a certain place and nobody expected to win. And a lot of people, will look at my first couple of years here in Arizona and was like, oh, those are lost years. Kurt was, terrible in those years, and, that sort of stuff. And I get it. And I understand why. But what they don't understand is how hard that process is to get an organization and to get people to believe and to get people to invest in what it takes to be successful at this level. And so, you're going to go through some growing pains, and you're going to go through some of those hard times where, it just doesn't look good. And you wonder, okay, are we making any progress? And then you bring in a piece here and you bring in a piece there, or, shared stories with you guys about Larry Fitzgerald, kind of what his mindset was when I got here. And then obviously what his mindset became and what his mindset was when he left were completely different as he grew and as he developed and as he saw how, this thing has to be done at this level if you want to be consistently really, really good and competitive. And so, yeah, I think patience is so important. As I said, especially with guys that are stepping into a spot for the first time, is you have to, give them a chance. And as long as you're seeing that growth, that to me is the most important thing. When it gets stagnant and it stops and you don't see that anymore and you go, okay, this is what we think our limit is with this guy. That's when, to me, you step back and go, okay, is it time to move forward, or do we think we have enough there, to take that step forward, I guess, with them in the organization.
It just seems like they're in the storm right now, this team.
Yep.
They're just trying to really kind of find their way out of it, to use some similarities again with that 2008 team. Like, you guys had that horrific game against the Jets. It was back-to-back losses. It was brutal. Like, I think it was 34-0 before half. They go down 35-0 to the Seahawks. and they have this game against the Niners. You guys were able to win the next game. Like, you go up against the Bills, and you like, how do you pick yourself up in the face of this adversity? Probably the most adversity some of these guys have ever faced. We're talking about a young coaching staff that maybe hasn't been down this road before. Like, where do you even start?
Well, I mean, I think you start by hanging on to the good things that, that you're doing, and I think you can pull a lot of good things, from what we saw. I mean, even if you look at the 49er game yesterday, I mean, there was a lot of good things that their offense did, and what it was 17 penalties or whatever. Well, those are the things that, they get things going haywire very quickly. And then I think the other thing is you focus on making sure that you start fast, because again, things can spiral really quickly when you don't have a great football team or a great mindset as a football team. And you've been losing a lot of games, that things go against you early and then they get out of hand. If you can start fast and be competitive early, that just breeds confidence within your team. And again, as we're taking this process, right? When you've got a team that's already won and been successful, that doesn't apply as much. You expect a certain standard all the time. But when you're a team that's learning how to win, it's important that you start fast and you get things going early, and you focus on the positive things that you can do, and you take that and run towards the next week, believing that, hey, if we do this, it'll lead to a win. And then just like, one win can lead to another win, as opposed to one loss can lead to another loss. And so that's really what you're trying to do. You're trying to stack it. And again, throw the analogy out, in 2007. I remember that year, we were up and down and trying to figure it out, but we won our last 2 games of that season. And I felt like, those back-to-back wins at the end of 2007 gave us so much momentum and confidence moving forward that we believed differently about our team going into 2008. And, so I think trying to stack some things here down the stretch and get a couple, really good wins under their belt, or, maybe you have a winning record here, from this point forward. And those are the things you hang on to and grab a hold of. And then, you try to use that to catapult you forward the next year. So instead of losing these games, you're believing and you're winning these games early in the season. And now things start to turn in that, that opposite direction.
Kurt, we had you on about a month ago talking hypotheticals with Kyler Murray in the offseason. We fast forward to now, and those appear to be, at least in the speculation of reality, as Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport feel like a divorce could be imminent with the once upon a time first overall pick. How difficult of a situation is this for the Cardinals to navigate? Given the fact that, wasn't drafted by this regime, he's on injured reserve now. He clearly probably will have a market this offseason, but as Bo and I talk on the regular here, you trade Kyler Murray, what does that leave you in your quarterback room? Like, how sensitive of a situation is this to navigate for a regime that looks like is going to get at least one more year?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many ways to look at it.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, no matter where you sit, I think the question always has to come back to, do we believe Kyler is the guy that can lead us to the next level, can help us take the next step? That to me is the whole question. And as a regime or as an organ, you have to answer that question. Like, you might want him to be, but do you truly believe that he is? Or you might truly believe that he is, and it's just about, circumstances and what's happened. But that's the question that you have to answer. And I don't know if I've used this analogy on this show with you guys, but, I think back to the Cincinnati Bengals when, they were just a losing franchise. I remember back in 1999 when we played Cincinnati, the 3rd game of the year when I was with the Rams. And the headline was, this is the losingest team. Whoever loses this game will be the losingest team of the 90s. So that's where that organization has been. Then they got Andy Dalton. And Andy Dalton made them a perennial winner. They would win their division. They would get to the playoffs every year. But they would never be able to take the next step from that. Andy was good, and he was great for the organization, and he gave them what they needed at that time. But he was limited. And the organization finally realized, like, man, Andy was great. And he did what we needed him to do to change that culture. But Andy's not getting us to that next step. He's not taking us there. So they let Andy Dalton go, who was a really, really good starting quarterback in the league. And they went out and got Joe Burrow. And they went and got Joe Burrow because they said, that's the guy that can take us to the next step. And he has, obviously we know all the issues with the injury, but just in and of itself, playing football, he has taken them to the next step and got them to a Super Bowl. And so those are the tough decisions that sometimes you have to make. And it's not to say that Kyler's not a really good quarterback. It's not to say that Kyler's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. The question is he what you guys, your organization needs to take you where you believe you can go? And that's the question that, again, I can't answer. Where is the team right now? What do we need from that position? Because we've seen it. We've seen him play at an MVP type level. It just hasn't been as consistent as you would like it to be at the quarterback spot. So that to me becomes the question that the Cardinals are going to have to ask, and this regime is going to have to ask when it comes to Kyler Murray. Not is he good, can he play at an MVP type level for period? Like, no, those questions have been answered. But is he the right guy to lead us where we want to go and have to go as a regime? And that to me ultimately has to be, where you fall on either side of the line. Yes, he's that guy. Then you bring him back. Like, if you believe it's because of other reasons, you bring him back. And then if he's not, then as tough as it may be, you have to move a different direction and then figure out, to your point, okay, where does that leave us? Yeah. Where are we and what position are we in? Do we go out and sign somebody? Do we keep a Jacoby Brissett that we believe can kind of keep the seat warm until we get that position and can go get our Joe Burrow if that's the direction that they choose to go? And that's not an easy situation either, because you guys know as well as I do. We oftentimes have a struggle finding 32 starting quarterbacks in the league. So when there's not that many of them out there, and you take a guy and say, we're going to let one of those guys go, in hopes of getting another one that's higher in the hierarchy of the 32. We've seen a lot of teams do that too, and they go 10 and 15 years searching and grabbing and pulling and trying to find it, and they can't find it either because, quite frankly, there's just not a lot of Joe Burrows out there. There's not a lot of those elite guys out there, but you have to weigh how all of that changes or affects your organization moving forward. And again, I don't envy those positions because it is an inexact science when it comes to the quarterback position. And there's no guarantee if you get rid of a good one that you get a great one.
There's no Super Bowl MVP caliber guy that's going to come your way again and save your organization. That's unfortunate. That doesn't happen every offseason, but
we're due for that.
Yeah, it muddies up my question though, Kurt, because I wanted to ask you, like, as far as what you've seen, because you've done so many great QB confidentials on Kyler, breaking down the film, and just what your thought would be, what scheme Kyler would fit in best. But like, even if that's the case, if you find the best scheme based off what you've told us several times about the inconsistencies, even with the right scheme fit, could that bring consistency? What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah. I wish I could answer that. I think, that's one of those questions that's really hard to answer unless you're around a guy every day and you really know what they do well, and like watching in practice, what he would do consistently well, at the quarterback position. And then I could ask the question, okay, these are the things that he's great at and that I could count on every single week. Can we build a scheme around that? Can we do something where we can use those skills and be built that way? Because to me, just being the incredible athlete that he is, and the incredible playmaking that he gives you, that's awesome. But I always sit back and go, okay, but how do I truly take that and utilize that in a weekly game plan? Like what are those things that you can do? And, of course there's certain things with naked bootlegs and zone reads and things like that. But normally I look at those things and go, but I don't know if I can build a game plan around that and win every week against good teams, just adding those few elements in. And so again, that's just one example with the athletic part of it. And so I am a firm believer that even with the great athletic quarterbacks we have in our business now, that the best of those are the ones that play within scheme and structure in the pocket first, and then bring the extra after that. And so that would be the question that, that I would have to answer with Kyler is, okay, what are those things scheme wise and in structure that he does really, really well? And, if I take, whatever, percentage that is, along with, being able to bring his athleticism into it, and that percentage, does that get me to a high enough percentage, where I can build a scheme and say, yeah, if we've got to go in and run, 70 plays this week, I have got a scheme that I feel 100% comfortable with, that Kyler can execute all 70 of those plays at an extremely high level. Because once you start getting away from that and go, okay, I feel good with, 50% of them, or I feel good with 60% of them, that's where we're starting to take a dip. Mm-hmm. And so, just to answer your question, I just don't know. I'd have to see him every day and see what plays he loves and what throws he consistently makes or reads he consistently makes, and then go, oh gosh, yeah, there's plenty here for us to build, build a scheme and build an offense around, his incredible skill set.
Fair enough. I saw after Jacoby's NFL record 47 completions the other day, I looked up what your highest was, 40. You guys had the same amount of attempts, 57. What's it like just dropping back and throwing it, ripping it that much in an NFL game?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it depends on the situation. Like if you're in a competitive situation, so the game is competitive, it's a blast. You know, I mean, you guys remember I played arena football, so we never handed it off. And so every time it was a pass. And so it was awesome. It was backyard football, and, and games were decided by your right arm. In a competitive situation in the NFL, it's awesome too, because you just know, man, I get a say in all of this. Like what happens is because of, me throwing the football. When you're down in a game, it's not quite as much fun. I mean, you love winging it around, but it's like, everybody makes a huge deal of every mistake, which you get it, right? Because it's a close game. But it's like, dude threw 57 times. Like he's going to make a mistake. And he didn't make very many of them. I mean, 10 incompletions and 57 pass attempts is just stupid. Like, that's ridiculous. But of course there's going to be an interception or two. There's going to be a missed throw that happens and goes into the defender's hand. So again, a lot of it just depends on that. But I mean, he played awesome. And I actually love the scheme that they play. I tweeted today just about, this idea of the 5-out situations. I was a big proponent of getting the running back out free and putting pressure on the defense and getting in empty sets. And I thought the Cardinals utilized that extremely well. I mean, I thought San Francisco did too, but I thought the Cardinals utilized that really, really well and had a bunch of good scheme things that I really liked. And Jacoby, Jacoby was all over it. And so it was just tough because he's down in the game. And I mean, I couldn't believe it when my son texted me and he's like, he went 47 of 57. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm looking up the score. I'm like, oh my gosh, this must've come down to the wire. What happened? I mean, 10 incompletions out of 57, and then I see the penalties and then I see they lost by 20. And I'm like, how does that even happen? Like, so when I was watching the tape, I'm trying to look and gauge, okay, did every incompletion come on third down? Like what happened in this game that you can do that and get beat the way that they did? It's hard to believe because he played an excellent football game. And I really liked a lot of what they did. Playmakers, guys making plays all over the place. But yeah, I mean, it's not fun in a game like that. Like you'd love to come out of that going, I threw for 450 yards and I completed an NFL record and I had 83% completions out of 57 attempts. Like all this stuff is mind blowing. But what does it mean at the end of the day when you're not even really competitive in the game?
Yeah. He said he could care less. I mean, obviously it's the right thing to say, be humble, especially after, taking a loss, but you got sacked 5 times in that game. He didn't get sacked once. He certainly took his hits. So a little bit, which is also astounding.
It was. I mean, yeah. I mean, the whole thing, it was just, because that's all I could think when I was watching the tape is like, where did his incompletions come from? Like what? A couple of them were drops, a couple of them were tipped on top of it. And I mean, you're just like, I thought he played an excellent football game. I just, again, it's almost hard to, if you're just watching the tape, to even believe that it wasn't a close football game either. But yeah, there were definitely times where it's like, oh man, great play. And then all of a sudden you flip on the next one and it's 3rd and 20, they're moving back 10 yards. And so just all the, the setbacks that they had in that game, unfortunately, they couldn't make it more competitive because he played awesome.
We're going to see if Jacoby can force the issue like you did at the end of the 2007 season. We got 7 games to go. We're going to chat with Kurt Warner the rest of the season. Kurt, safe travels this week. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.